Well, it looks like Alec Baldwin lied. I'm sorry, I'm sitting here thinking about all the comments that I got on that video that I put out. I had 250,000 views on that video about can a single action army go off by itself without pulling the trigger. Some of the weirdest stuff I'd ever heard of came up in that video. Phantom notch, lead getting down around the back of the cylinder, down through the hammer, down underneath the spring. I mean, all things any gun can break down. We all know that any gun can malfunction. But at the same time, I knew that if that single action revolver that he had was working properly, it would not have gone off if he hadn't pulled the trigger. And like I said, got a lot of comments about a lot of people that were trying to compare it to Heritage Rough Riders and trying to compare it to the Cattleman 2 system, which is what you get in most modern reproductions of the Colt single action 3-click hammer. What he had was an older Pieta. It had 4 clicks, 1, 2, 3, 4, just like this. And that system is a very safe system. A lot of people were asking about the cowboy load and this and that. The cowboy load thing is kind of up in the air because they do have a safety notch right there, and that is a very strong safety notch. And the only thing that really the cowboy load affects is if you had loaded it with all 6 and then not use the safety notch and then put the hammer right down on the primer. Then if you hit it, it would go off. But after that happened, I saw all these big YouTubers and everybody that were, bigger gun channels. Everybody was running out and buying a single action, trying to make a video on it. Half of them had never even handled a single action, it seemed like, before they made their videos. And, all of them were almost unanimously going out and getting the Cattleman 2 system, which is the new Uberti that has the 3-click safety hammer. And that's just not what that gun that he had. You could tell just by looking at it that it was the old model. And that was not the gun that was being used. The gun he was using had a 4-click hammer, just like this. And the reason that a lot of us got so upset about what he said is because it's already hard to get a 4-click hammer just because of the lawyers that are working with these replica companies. Because even though it has that safety, not a lot of people know it's there and not a lot of people use it. So the 4-click, even though it's a perfectly safe system, if you know how to use it, is going the way of the dodo bird. It's going to be gone pretty soon. And so that's why I always try to encourage people to go out there and get 4-click hammers now. All I can say is he was wrong. I'm sure that what actually happened, he may not have known he was pulling the trigger. He probably pressed the trigger, cocked the hammer, and then let the hammer go. Just like that, with the trigger pulled, and didn't even know he was pulling the trigger. But whether he pulled the trigger, it cocked the hammer, and he basically fanned it or slipped it, all of that requires pulling the trigger, which, as we look back now, I put a lot of this on him. How did the live ammo wind up there? That's a moot point, really, because you just don't, it doesn't matter if it's a movie or not. You've got to be careful. You got to treat every gun as if it's loaded. You've got to check it. I checked this one before I came on camera, but just so that you can see, yes, it's unloaded. We've had major discussion about the ammo. It's easy to tell blank on a movie set because they're loaded with BBs. Most of the time they're plastic and they're very well marked. Just by checking it, he could have known. We blamed the armorer for a while. Guess what? The armorer wasn't even in the room. She had been told to leave because of COVID precautions, I guess you might say, because I guess they thought if she was in there, someone could get sick and possibly die. What's the irony in that, huh? She had nothing to do with it. She couldn't be there to check it because she wasn't allowed in the room. This all falls on the shoulder of the man that pulled the trigger, just like if it was me and I was out there making a video with my brothers and they were filming with the camera and I turned around to make a point, pointed the gun at the camera that I thought was unloaded and squeezed the trigger and killed my brother. That would not be on the camera, nor would it be on my brother. That would be on me. I would be arrested probably for at least manslaughter. But anyway, these guns are perfectly safe, guys. A lot of the stories of them going off because the safety notch was broken or something like that, a lot of that's blown out of the water. Like I said, the only way that's going to happen really is if you let the hammer completely down on a live primer and then somehow you jar it and it hits the primer. That has nothing to do with the Alec Baldwin situation. The Load 5, I Load 5, because it's honestly the safest way to do it, but that has nothing to do with what he was doing. If you pulled that hammer back to half cock, didn't get half cock, guess what? It's going to catch every time in the quarter cock notch. If you pull that hammer all the way back to a little past half cock, guess what? It's going to catch in the half cock notch. If you pull it all the way back to just before it locks, it's going to catch in the half cock notch. And by the way, if it did rotate all the way back and he let go, it wouldn't be in line to fire. But that's enough said about this whole situation, you know. There's nothing left to cover. Everybody kind of knew what was going on from the beginning. He pulled the trigger, and now the FBI has concluded the same thing. They've tested the gun. They've drop tested it. Whatever they've done, they have concluded that if he dropped it from half, it would have caught in the quarter cock. If he dropped it from beyond that, it would have caught in the half cock. The trigger had to be pulled. They tested the gun. So all the theories out there about how unsafe these guns are, that's all out the window, guys, because guess what? It was the man himself the whole time. He tried to blame the gun just like he always does, and people like him do, and it was not the gun's fault. Anyway, trust in God, keep your powder dry. Bye.